Hello and welcome back to Deconstructed. I'm your host Sam Animo Mackenzie, and with me, after a fucking long break, is Harry Nero Richards. Harry, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, I was enough okay. It's been a while. That's all your fault, of course. All your travels, all your events. But
Who travelled first?
you're back. You're back.
Who
So we're
travelled
back.
first?
Oh, I don't remember. It's a long time ago.
Um, okay, okay. Well, we both had. Well, I had a good time on my travels.
Yeah, great event actually. Great event.
Yeah,
Uh,
great event, great event. Right, moving swiftly on. So, we thought today we'd talk about Heroic because they were one of our favourite teams to talk about. We did quite like them. And now after probably the most dramatic transfer saga of all time, they've been forced to rebuild. And I'm sure we've I'm sure we've both got some thoughts on this team. They did manage to rebuild. I almost expected they wouldn't. But yeah, so I think the best place for us to start really isn't what they've got, and it's what they've lost. Because there's a question I want to ask you. Because regardless of what anyone might think about their placements, they have lost three top 20 players. Uh, one of the best IGLs in the world, that goes without saying, and um, two really good riflers who have been dog shit for most of the year. But but they are very good riflers, at least in group stages. So my question to you, Harry, before we get into what they've added, is could Heroic have ever, and let's say the margin for success. Let's just get this one out there at the start because it's already going to be the fucking title of the video. If the margin of success is a consistent top 10 team, could Heroic have ever successfully rebuilt, or have they?
um, ooh, I honestly, I think they should be in and around there, shouldn't they? Shouldn't they? I think with who they've signed, I think Nertz is a better player than anyone on the old roster. I'll say that for starters. I think Nertz is a better player than Stam. And you've got Sjuush Teses as the base. Kyxsan very highly rated. Most people you speak to. I mean, Nicoodoz is very very good on CS2. Barely even AWPs. Still very good on CS2. I think this should be a top 10 team. Yeah, I think so. I'm probably higher on it than you then.
Um, I mean, I was gonna save this little list for the end, but we may as well bring it up at the start. And I'm not saying this team can't dip into the top 10 here and there because at least for a year they'll get to stat pad at Blast. But
16 team event, mate. Come on,
well,
respect.
okay, everyone else is stat padding now. But okay, G2, Navi, FaZe, Vitality, Cloud9, Spirit, Astralis, Mouse, Falcons, VP, Monty, Complexity. Oh, and I didn't even include Liquid. Did I? Did I say Liquid?
Yeah, so just
No, I
chuck
didn't
Liquid
say
and
Liquid.
Heroic in.
So okay, cool. You can sit Heroic in that list as well.
Yeah,
Which of those teams do they consistently beat?
I would say Complexity. I would say until Cloud9 get an AWPer, I would want them to beat them. I would say Monty. I would say them v
I think
VP
you severely
is going to be
underrate
close.
Monty.
I think Monty are good. I just think I don't know. I think the ceiling on Heroic should be higher than Monty in theory for me. I think they're going to play more partner events. They're going to play tier one teams more. They should have more experience. Blah 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 blah. So I think Spirit, Liquid, Heroic should break into this top 10. I don't think that's impossible. I think the Navi team with Wonderful, honestly, that should be a good little barometer for where Heroic should aim to be. Like they're fourth right now because of Pro League, basically, but they're going to drop. Um, so yeah, I don't know. It depends who Miles replaced Frozen with as well. Like you don't know where all these international teams are going to sit, but I think Heroic definitely should be top 10. They definitely should be. I think it would be a discredit to at least Sjuush, Teses, and Nertz if this isn't a top 10 team.
Okay, okay. Well, you've said the name, so let's switch away from that now, and we'll come back to that at the end because recently true to your name, you've been a bit flip floppy
Oh no.
in these podcasts. So let's start with their base in terms of players, and we'll start with Sjuush. So Sjuush, for his role, what, top 3 in the world? Is that fair to say?
Yeah,
Probably
I
fair
would
to
say
say.
so.
Incredible player, and me and you have said it before, and you can make this argument for Teses as well. He really, really just should be on Astralis. So in that sense, regardless of this team's performances, whether they do become consistent top 10 or if they just have a little flirt with the top 10, do you expect to see Sjuush on this team by the end of the year?
I don't know when his contract runs out, but I think Astralis would be absolutely stupid to not know about that and be looking at that and saying to Stare like, yeah, sorry, mate. It's like they've chucked Stare in anchor roles, they've chucked Stare in horrible T-side roles, and they're just going to be like, well, we spent a bit of money on you, so we're giving you a chance, we're giving you a real chance, but they're not giving him a chance. They're not. He's going to have a terrible time, and I think he's a good fighter, but I think he's going to have a terrible time, and especially with Sjuush waiting, like from what Stan and Yavi's statement said, like Sjuush and Teses were on board with the whole cutting cading thing. Like I know they played with him, like they probably weren't this big a factor, but I would be shocked if Sjuush, unless he signed some stupid contract, the last time Astralis came knocking, which was like last year, I think. Was it summer last year, a bit before, maybe?
Yeah, well, summer was when they made
Was
changes.
it when they
So.
cut Zipix, or was it before that? I don't know. Anyway, they've gone after Sjuush before, so they
Well, it's
obviously
not like they
admire him.
ever
Like, why
really
wouldn't
backed
they?
Altex, so
Yeah, this is what I mean. Assets was temporary, so I think Sjuush, they'd be stupid not to go for Sjuush. So yeah, Sjuush, you as heroic, you really want to build around someone like that, but yeah, he it's going to be
do
hard to
you want to
keep him.
build around a player like Sjuush?
Well, not build around him, but like so. I always think like is Counter Strike like a weak link game or like a strong link game? Because if you think it's a weak link game, then starting with like anchors of Sjuush and Teses, you're like, great, our floor is going to be higher than most teams, right? That's what you've got to look at when you've got a player like Sjuush. Like he's never going to be a star, definitely not in playoffs. Like he's not that guy. He's just a very very stable base, and for heroic that's great. But with heroic going international, like so in 6 months, if Astralis pick up Sjuush and heroic get like I don't know like JKS or something, like is that what do we think? Is that miles worse? Like I don't know, maybe. So
I'd
it's one of those
argue it
things.
might
It's one of those
actually be
things.
an upgrade.
Yeah, maybe. But I do think Sjuush's destiny is Astralis. I would be shocked unless Altec somehow nicks it. I think Sjuush is guaranteed that. So yeah, so where does that leave you when you talk about this heroic team? Is they're going to want to build around Sjuush because he's one of the legacy players, but it's obviously going to be quite difficult. But in terms of just on the server, like he's still going to have the output. I think like there's no doubt on the server, Sjuush is going to be very very strong in his roles, and they'll probably have to end up replacing him. But until then, like he's a very valuable asset. I see no problem with Sjuush. That's for sure.
No, of course, there's no problem with him. It's just, as you said, like if they're not top 10, it it's a discredit to him. But
Mm-hmm.
like you said, he's the floor, and really reaching top 10 is a ceiling thing, not a floor thing necessarily. Or at least I don't think it will be this year. I really don't think it will be this year.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
stacked.
the teams I mentioned probably do all have higher ceilings. And I think for the first time in years, it's going to be really competitive in that sense. Not just like, oh, who's 10th at the moment? Is it OG because they got one win at groups? Like,
I mean, the ranking will still work like that. There's going to be like
no, of
Parry
course,
Vision
it
are
will.
going to have a pro league run and beat 12th for like 3 months. Like that is going to happen still.
No,
But yeah, I
Paravision are
think
getting that off the fucking major, mate.
that team's nuts. We need to do one on them.
It's really good. It's really good. But no,
Maybe it's
so
just
I wanna switch you there. Before you say anything, and I apologise because you also said it would be a discredit or disservice, whatever you said, to Teses. And I really like Teses. I think Teses is a great player, and like Sjuush, he's a great player um, in his role. But there's a couple things about Teses, and I'm gonna bring them both up, and you choose to tackle them whichever way round you wish. But obviously there was initial reports that Heroic were going to be signing Madden, Sunpius, and Nertz. Obviously that's not how it turned out. But if you remember the reported roster at the end of that, it implied Teses was also gone. Presumably, Kyxsan would
Yeah.
arrive. So clearly, someone in Heroic, or maybe it was Kyxsan. Maybe Kyxsan was just asked, like, what do you need? Or maybe it was due to the idea of Madden. Like, there's a ton of factors, but clearly someone didn't think Teses was necessary. And like I said, 5 minutes ago, whatever it was, we both think Teses could also be on Astralis. Like, I still would like Teses on this
For roles
Astralis.
more
For
than
yeah,
talent,
yeah,
though, right?
for roles more than talent, whatever. But so the other part of this is so a the worry of why were they willing to let go of him, but b Teses is he's like a lamb to the slaughter to throw back to a little thing that we forgot to work on. But he's like a lamb to the slaughter. He had Stown being his beta for a long time. So who's going to be the Stown in this team?
I don't. It's not. It's going to be a very different structure, right? Surely, because you think about someone like Kyxsan, he's not. He's not the snappy type IGL. He's not jumping around corners. That's not him. He's more of the Alexi B Apex baity boys who want to get their flash assist in. I'm pretty sure, anyway. I mean, I don't think of him as like this super aggressive bomb site entry, anyway. So Teses is going to have a similar role to the old heroic team. To be honest, I think he's still going to be going in first, and it's going to be. There's not going to be a big beta on this team. I don't think that's how they're going to build it. It's going to be Teses in first, and then Sjuush, Kyxsan as the main trade fraggers. Nertz, obviously quite an aggressive lurker, but if he's going to be trading, he's going to do it very well. And I think it's for me, Teses doesn't change. Sjuush and Teses are going to have the exact same roles as heroic. The question marks over them is how much were they elevated by the system? How much were they maybe even held back by the system? Someone like Teses, clearly a playmaker. Like, I mean, I don't think he's held back, but you never know. You never know what can happen. I say that's the worry is that without Cadian, we're going to see their individual ability. Without the Danish communication, we're going to see without team play, and at least at first, like there's not going to be team play. It's just not going to happen. Like maybe between each other, but they're going to be on opposite sides of the map a lot of the time. So that's where the challenge starts to come in. Is that what happens with this team when you remove Cadian? What happens to Sjuush and Tessa specifically? Because a lot of the times we're asking for them in Astralis, whatever. Like that's in the same type of system. Like the Astralis play a very similar style to Heroic. At least they definitely would if they had Sjuush as well. Like that's just three of the players, and then might be getting Existor's coach. I don't know. I'd assume like they've got rid of Castle. I don't know who else they'd get. So it's that thing. You're talking about Teses and Sjuush, and you can only really talk about them as Cadian players because it's been that long. You can only think of them as Cadian players, and it's obvious that Sjuush's skill set would be useful wherever. But Teses, would he, without what Cadian's given him, would he be like the space taker on a top 10 international team? Like you wouldn't jump. You wouldn't jump at that. Like, of course you wouldn't jump on that. And in this team, like he does need to be like a third star, I'd say. He does need to be that. So you can see where the question mark arises. But I still think he's just a really good player. I think he's going to do his role really well. And I think you're going to see, still a really good base for them to build off. Like he's going to be like him, Kyxsan and Sjuush are probably all going to be like 1.0 to 1.1 players, probably. Like none of them are bad. They're not going to have a bitch. It's more that they're going to have like a high floor. And Teses is part of that good floor. And I know what you're going to say about ceiling. And obviously that is where they lack, they lack that third star. There's question marks over Nicoodoz as a top 2 star too, despite how good he was in Preezy. So that is where the roster's obviously going to fall down a bit. But I think I don't see a problem with it at all. I still think he's a really good player. Like anchor on CT, entry on T, like they're one of my favorite types of players, and Teses does it very well a lot of the time.
So I wasn't going to say that. I was going to say, if we're talking about him as a third star, do either of us think he's good enough to be that on a good team? I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I think no. I think he should be fourth. Him and Sjuush
So
seem like fourth and fifth, or like third and fourth, maybe, because they're both so good,
yeah.
right? Like maybe in combination, if they're the third and fourth best, that's fine.
So there's a problem with the team, and the other thing I was going to say is, obviously his role stays the same. Um, I didn't prepare a list of names because I didn't know this conversation was particularly going to go this way. But there's probably a number of players of Tests' profile that are better individual players.
Well, even someone like
So,
Jacob that Kyxsan could have brought along and kept the same entry
well,
pack. Like there's something to that.
I would have
I wouldn't have
put
done
up
that. I'm
Jacob
just
as the
saying like
obvious one
that's
because
the kind of player that Kyxsan likes
probably,
using. You know?
I think he probably individually is a better player though.
Yeah, I would never spend money on him, but that's all I
No,
mean. And there's going to
but
be lots of players like that.
so the big question is for me then, if Teses isn't as individually skilled as Jacob, he isn't as individually skilled as a figure like Rain, someone like that. Without having someone like Stown, are we going to see the true impact of Teses? And I don't mean that in a particularly positive sense. I mean, like, are we going to see that,
Like if he's
Teses
not
without
traded.
that star behind him? Yeah, if he's not traded, is he going to be less justifiable?
I mean, maybe, but I think we've already seen a little bit of this heroic. So without Cadian and without Stan and Yabi, and to be honest, Tesis was better than Sjuush. Tesis was kind of keeping that level, and he was in game leading as well. So obviously a little bit different. Like he was probably doing a bit of the Stan job sometimes. Like he's not completely inflexible. Like all the heroic players, they're all very flexible players. So I'm not too worried. I think the ultimate thing is if Sjuush and Tesis are both like 1.05, 1.10 players, is that as good as having like a clear third star and then a shit fourth player? Like, is that where are we looking in terms of would you rather have the really strong trio? Because I think that kind of does give you more X factors down the line in playoffs if your big T are a bit lower off. Like, I think that was one of Heroic's problems was only having two players that consistently took over games. Like, Tessers did it every now and again, but in playoffs, it was their floor didn't help them much, did it? Like, it's the ceiling, and for a ceiling, you need star players. So I do think Sjuush, Tessers, Kyxsan is like a supportive trio. Like, fine, it's going to do a job. It's going to be more than enough most of the time. But when you're really looking to make deep runs, and that's why I think this team probably doesn't need to do that. It's probably only going to be a top 10 team, tops, right? And for that, I think Sjuush Tessers is great. It's great. I'd have them in other teams. But I do think the Sjuush Tessers combination seems so good because you're used to having a fragging IGL alongside them. Because obviously Kane's the AWPer, so you can build a team differently, right? And if they were with Blame F, then it's fine as well. But they are kind of those players that offer the floor and not loads of ceiling that you really don't want to rely on as firepower all too much. And that's just, at the end of the day, that's just a structure thing. And I think maybe they'll elevate. I think they need to elevate for this team to exceed my expectations. And I think if one of them was, it's gonna be Tessus. Like I think Sjuush is a known quantity, whereas Tessus, like you always want a bit more from those aggressive players, right? And that's where you'd be looking.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. I think if either of them are going to elevate, as much as I said I don't think he will, um, I think it will be Teses, and as much as I said, there's probably other players with similar profiles. I'm not sure those
It's not
other
loads though.
players. I'm not sure those players also elevate the team like fucking Rain would, but you're not getting Rain.
Yeah, you're
Like
not getting Xertion. You're not getting
so
crazy players.
there's no point really questioning it. So instead, let's talk about the guy who is really tasked with elevating him, and the guy who's got to build this system with 4 new players who I really don't envy in that respect. So we got Kyxsan, and obviously there's been a few things said here and there about what the fee for Kyxsan might be. We don't know numbers, but if it is as high as certain people have suggested, um, I have nothing to say about that. It's certainly not smart, but I have nothing to say about it outside of that.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing we haven't mentioned about Heroic yet is the new ownership. And you saw the thing about the 1xBet links in the it was like Paradise Papers or something. It's some Valorant journalist work. It was actually quite interesting. So this is not a company that doesn't have money. Is basically the point, and maybe that's a promising thing for their future. It's just yeah, they might be
Well,
getting looked into for a few things
yeah,
in terms of
it is
spending
just
power. But at
more.
the moment, they've got spending power. That's what you should take away from this Kickstarter
Well,
buyout.
it is just more, where the money is and how you get it from those places, and
Yeah, come to the award show, guys.
whether you should have money from those places. Hmm. Anyway,
hmm
anyway, so Kixan, I think you and I both think he's a decent enough IGL.
Yeah,
Like, I was pretty impressed by him in Paris, and I've said before that I thought of. Well, I mean, it was obvious that Shuey and I were going to leave Gamer Legion, but even with if they'd stayed on Gamer Legion, like I thought Apex were the ones with the most stopping power. Um, even if they lost JL, really,
yeah. But
and
that's exactly what
that
I was. Sorry, just to say, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like Gamer Legion star players get further than Apex who have a higher floor. I think that's. But Apex would clearly be a better team long term. I think that's exactly what we're talking about. And what would you rather have?
I I actually don't think you can talk about Gamer Legion in this light. In this conversation, I think Gamer Legion
Because of
is
Shuey?
such a okay. Well, A, there's Shuey, who is obviously just very, very good at what he does, but we're not talking about like ceiling when we talk about Gamer Legion in Paris. We're talking about like
Gamer.
fucking
Yeah.
yeah. We're talking about a level that a player is never ever going to reach again in his career. Like that's not ceiling. It's a fluke. Let's just treat it as it was. I'm definitely has a
So
lot
good
more in
though.
him. He has a lot more to show on Navi, and I do think we'll start to see that this year. But let's not pretend he is that player that he was in Paris.
Yeah,
He
it's a
has never
Kiabi
been that
moment
player
for
that he was
sure.
in Paris. He will never be that player that he was in Paris, and there's nothing fucking wrong with that.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that's Nico's done that like once. It was like Nico Stockholm. It was that level.
yeah, it's like so. Unfortunately, I'm gonna nip that last thread in the bud, mate.
Okay, Kicksan
So
then. But
Apex, it surprised me when Apex sort of slipped down the pecking order. Um, it surprised me that Monty was the one that rose to the top. I thought they were probably the. I mean, I can't really say that next to Game Legion and ITB after what I've just said, but I thought Monty were definitely fluky. I didn't necessarily think Apex were fluky. I thought we were actually seeing Apex elevate to a level.
hmm
Um, and there's probably many reasons why Apex have slipped, but Kixan now has this opportunity, and we've said in various podcasts he makes sense to be the next IGL to get one of these big opportunities. So the question I really want to ask is, despite the fact they have slipped down the pecking order, and obviously there's fucking Nertz here who's better than any player on Apex, but was this move that worth it for Kixan? on a team basis, purely team basis, like ignore the partner bollocks.
Organization. I mean, I think so. I think the organization are bigger. I think the partner spots. Like I know it's only one more
No,
year,
ignore that. Ignore that. I mean, just
or
the
just
players.
5 for 5.
Mhm.
I think it's a better team. Yeah. Who's on Apex now? It's like Sticko, Satsunito, Nork,
Sense is
Jacob,
the
and
IGL.
Sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, like come
And
on,
obviously he
This
had
is a better
sense,
team.
not
This is a
Sticko.
better team. Sjuush. I love Sticko, but Sjuush is a better player than Sticko. And then Nork, Nicoodoz, kind of similar in my head. Nicoodoz,
I
similar
feel like
level,
Nork
like very, very different players.
is
Like
better.
Nork is very passive, Nicoodoz very aggressive. But Satsunito v Nertz, I'm having Nertz. Jacob
No,
Teses,
obviously.
like we said, like future proof wise, like clearly Teses as well. Like Jacob's getting on. So
Yeah, but you
yeah,
take Jacob
it's a
right
better
now,
team than
wouldn't you?
Apex. Come on,
You take
for the
Jacob
next
right now,
for the next
wouldn't you?
6 months, I'd probably take Jacob. Like Jacob's, he must be. Oh, well. Anyway, point
30.
is, yes, Heroic is. I think he's made the right career decision. Yes, and I think with the partner spots with who's coach, which we should mention when we're talking about an IGL, with a coach like Saw, like that's going to help a lot. I've got a lot of faith in a system that Saw can build, and the other reason I've got a lot of faith in Kyxsan is from something I was talking to Sticko at. I think it was the major. I think it was either at the major or just after the major, and it's kind of similar to Heroic because it was one of my articles. You know, when I did the roles thing, like the
I
traders
don't
and
read
the
your articles.
whatever. Well, so I was basically trying to work out using trade stats, like what structure a team had, and he asked me like what would Apex come up as because we don't really have it. And I looked at it, and yeah, Apex, all their riflers, because this is like the JL, Sticko, Kyxsan, and who did they have then? JL,
Jacob,
Kyxsan,
JL,
Sticko,
Sticko,
Jacob,
Kyxsan,
yeah, Nog.
Nork.
Anyway, but they're all very fluid riflers. So I think that's going to suit him coming into Teses and Sjuush. I think that's going to really help because he's used to calling around a team that everyone's happy going in first, everyone's happy going in second. And I think Kyxsan is like one of those IGLs that, like, as a pure chalkboard, tactics board thing, I much prefer having an IGL like Snappy who goes in first than an IGL who likes to throw the flashbangs and throw the right utility and then go in second. Because I just much rather have your IGL dead. I'm fine with a dead IGL because then you can have the 4 players who should be being set up. It's a bit of a myth for me that throwing flashbangs is setting people up. If you're throwing flashbangs, you're baiting. And it's why being Apex's entry fragger is just so hard. If you're the IGL, just get in first. But anyway, that's more of a stylistic thing. It can work. We can see it works with Apex and everyone like that. We can see it does work. But I think that's one of the reasons Ema struggled under Alexi B2 because it's a different type of thing. And Chewy, obviously, he's not like a complete bitch, so it's different. But he had Keels and people doing it. Now Ema's the bitch in Navi, and he never was in Game Legion, ever. So the point is, sucks for Teses, but he's going to carry on being the bitch. And Kyxsan, system-wise, I think should actually be able to do quite well here. He's young. He's future-proof. If he can build a partnership with Saw, like, that's your route into an international team because he's clearly got loads of potential. Like, he's been talked about for G2 a few times, like, briefly, if they ever were going to get rid of Huxley. Like, he was always the name that came up. And obviously that helps with the Balkan links. But I do think there's genuinely a player there that really has a lot of potential as an IGL. And it's a good bet to take if you're Eric. It's a really good bet to take because let's be honest, like in a few years, like Sjuush might be an Astralis, then they might not care about the Danish links as much, blah, blah, blah. But Kyxsan, Nertz, Saw, like if they're going to be a good team, I'd say all 3 of them probably stay for that at the very least. So I think Kyxsan's a really smart pickup.
Okay. No, I can.
If
I can
anything,
go
he's the
with
one
that.
getting poached. That's what I mean. Him and Nertz are the poachable ones. If we assume Sjuush is just off anyway, which might be
Yeah.
a wrong
Okay.
assumption.
Yeah. Those are the poachable ones. I think Nicoodoz could be really good, and
Yeah, we'll see on that one.
who's he gonna go to? Like,
Yeah, it's just harder
I
to be an AWP, isn't it?
I really don't think it matters how good he is in terms of that poachable thing, and that's not even anything against him. That's just the people above him. I think, like, obviously, Heroic want to be competitive. They want to stay competitive. They want to remain competitive. For as long as they can. Uh, but I do think the thing you said about the the idea of who's poachable. Obviously, Kyxsan is poachable because, yeah, if G2 were to ever kick Hooksy, you'd hope that Nexa wouldn't be the IGL.
Yeah.
Because
Please.
I'm sure they could get another good player. Realistically, they could get Nertz or fucking Kyxsan, and you either have Nexa IGL or Kyxsan IGL. I know which one of those I would prefer because I don't want to see Nexa IGL for good players. They would win an event every year, I'm sure they would, but I also have watched him IGL bad players, and I don't want to watch him make good players bad. So, we'll move on from that one. But, in that sense, I actually don't think Kyxsan for Heroic is poachable. I think that's the player that they should really lock down. I think if you lose Nertz, yes, you're going to have a hard time replacing him, but I think you stand a fucking lot better chance of replacing him than you do Kyxsan. I think Kyxsan is someone who will probably consistently be able to, help you bring players in, especially with Saw, and we'll talk about Saw more. But Kyxsan is someone who's going to help you bring players in, he's going to build systems, and I think the thing that gives someone like Kyxsan value, or it gives someone like Shuush value, and it's probably the thing that you can do this to the Alexi B haters, and they'll struggle. Who else do you get?
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
what
right.
option? What option? Like people can say whatever they want about the amount of money Kyxsan cost. Like I don't think it was smart, but I don't think it's necessarily smart to spend that amount of money on any player when esports winter and whatnot, and the fact
Everyone
that
keeps
the
saying that.
money.
Everyone keeps chucking money around.
Well,
So what
yeah,
point
the
is it?
fact that the money
It's
in
not
this
for the
shit isn't
teams, is
real.
it? It's for all of
No,
us. It's not the teams.
it's for the money laundering, mate. Let's be real. But anyway, that was a joke. Just to be clear, I'm not a journalist.
The FBI aren't watching. It's fine.
But I don't think it's smart on a fucking financial basis. But I'd say that about anyone. It wasn't smart spending 600k on Munacy or 600k on.
Oh, it was. It was. They could have flipped him within a year for double that. So smart.
Probably a lot more,
smart.
but probably a lot more.
Well, yeah.
But we won't go into that one. So in terms of Kyxsan as an IGL, who the fuck else could they have got? And like, if they lost Kyxsan, where the fuck do you go from there? I don't think he's poachable at all. I think you fucking lock him up, throw away the key.
I don't.
And if you happen to know where that key is, you whack $3 million on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying poachable in a way that like he's gonna be easy to get out. I mean poachable in terms of people will want him, because you're completely right about the lack of IGLs, and you can see what happens because you only need to look at ends. Ends lose Snappy, and it's like okay, we'll lose Snappy, but he did a really good job building the team, blah blah blah. But we've still got Saw on the books. We've still got these 4 players. Get Glaive in. Okay, he's going to be slightly worse IGL, but look at the team. The team's still great, and it just completely falls apart. And that is partly because they all just wanted to leave. Like that is obviously a factor. But what I'm saying is, when you lose an IGL, you see how quickly a project can splinter. And I think for Apex, it's going to be interesting to see where they end up with Sense as the IGL. But it is obviously very, very difficult to lose an IGL because there's so few good ones. Like we talk about it with AWPers too. There's only how many good IGLs are there? Like 10. I don't know. Like it's so difficult to pick up like a really truly specialized good IGL. So yeah, Kyxsan.
I mean, I was about to go look at the top 20, but I can't even tell you who IGLs for fucking Monty. It's some guy
SDY, but sometimes Waro. Like I think it's mainly SDY. But yeah, the point is, it's hard.
You carry on speaking. I'm just going to go count the good IGLs.
Count how many good ones there are. But yeah, the main point is that Kyxsan Saw, like that is a partnership you're going to want to keep for a long, long time because one, IGLs are really hard to find. Two, coaches, no one knows what the fuck a good coach is apart from what people say in interviews. And Snappy fucking loved Saw in interviews, so he might be good. I guess that's all you can go off with a coach. He seems really good. Scouting seems really good. So him and Kyxsan as a duo, I think Heroic have made the bet in the right place. I think they're the duo that they like. You're going to look at it, and even we started this podcast talking about Teses and Sjuush as the base. But if you're committing to international and you've got all this new money from the new ownership, Kyxsan and Saw are the duo you actually long term want to be your base, because Saw has proven that he can lead international projects really well, and Kyxsan is a young IGL who should be around for a long, long time and still be a top 10 IGL for that whole time.
Okay, you finished talking. I was typing my count in just for the sake of remembering it. So it's 13. It's 14
What, in the
with
top 20?
Kyxsan.
Okay, so yeah,
so
there's not many, is there? That's more than there is AWPers,
This is how I went through it. This is how I went through it, because we can take a couple out if we feel like it. Apex, obviously. Carrigan, obviously.
Yeah.
Shui, obviously. Alexi B is going to be a controversial one, but fuck you, he's in there.
Yeah, he's in.
James, without a doubt. SDY was one I was like, he should probably be in there.
I think he should. He deserves to be.
Hooksy, absolutely. I included JT.
Yeah,
I actually think JT's got a lot going. Snappy, obviously. Then I missed out Furia.
Missed Boom.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, and Boomich. Sorry, I glossed over Boomich. I've always been really high on him. Chopper.
But then you're already into like the Choppers of the world, aren't you?
I didn't count Chopper, but realistically should probably be there. I didn't include Blame
Nathany,
F.
Blame F.
Obviously
there are a lot of good ones, but I would have Kyxsan above a lot of people. A lot of people we're talking about. I didn't
include Blame F. I could potentially include Alex, and then obviously Cadian and Kyxsan aren't in the current top 30.
Yeah.
So yeah, like
I think he's top 10 though, Kyxsan.
Yeah, he probably is top 10. I think it depends where you put names like Alexi, Young, Boomich, JT. I will always put Boomich ridiculously high compared to a lot of people. I've always said fuck you to the argument that Boomich can't IGL.
Just get a fucking AWPer, man. I can't tell if he's good.
Just get an AWPer. but yeah, so we're losing plot here. But it's been a while, so that's okay. But yeah, Kyxsan for me, really good pickup, and I hope that Apex falling off, sort of, in the last few months is more us seeing a consistent level with, like, okay, so the heroic floor is higher. This team's floor is higher. Fine. I'll say that.
Too. I don't care.
Well, the ceiling probably is whatever. But so I hope it's us seeing, that was just Apex consistent level, and then obviously Sassanito's not as good as JL and all that shit, and it's nothing actually to do with Kyxsan, and Apex didn't overperform because he overperformed his calling or any shit like that, and I would like it if on this team Kyxsan just shows he is top 10 IGL without a doubt, and is obviously then one of the reasons why this probably overperforms what people are expecting it to be.
Yeah, I'd agree. But I think this hinges on, and we definitely should move on, I think this hinges on Nicoodoz a lot. And Nicoodoz is one of those really, really interesting players, because we always used to bring him up as an example of the classic, like, the reason why AWPing is hard. The classic, like, maybe B tier over peaking AWPer who's 1.08 rating, and it's like, everyone says AWPing's so easy, but he's like the 12th highest rated AWPer, like the 50th highest rated AWPer in the world for Fnatic, and everyone says he's dog shit. Like, that's what we're talking about here, that type of player. But when he did get cut and go to Prezi, he barely AWPs. It's like 20%. He AWPs less than Zywu.
He's blasting tier 2
and well. He is destroying tier 2. I think he's the highest rated CS2 player still. Him and Altex
are just 1.28 rated in the last 3 months. It's ridiculous.
It's insane. So him and Altex are just, and I've no reason for me to bring up Altex, but yeah, he's the 3rd highest rating. So he is only Donk is higher rated than Nicoodoz on CSD. If you just click on CSD on HLTV, I don't know what the min maps is. So he is, and he's got
Fantastic.
way more maps as well. So he's like a 1.3 KD, 1.28 rating,
It's
0.82
ridiculous.
KPR, which is like better than Zywoo, 85 ADR for an AWPer, fair enough. And he's not even dying very much. Like he's genuinely just 1.44 impact
He's
as well.
just
By the way,
God.
he's just
He's just God.
he's the best hybrid AWPer in tier 2, and we do need to consider him as a different type of player than the Fnatic AWPer, because you could see you can see that that's a very difficult role to pull off. But what Nicoodoz has done in this Prezi team was to kind of change that perception, because he's clearly got a lot of aggressive bones in his body, but when he's going for it with a rifle, he's arsed. It's fine. Go off, Queen. You know, get up, banana, Nicoodoz. But when you're talking about him with an AWP, doing AWP donation service, then obviously it's a problem. But in CS2, I think this suits him. He's clearly found something that works for him. And the question is always going to be, does it work against tier 1 teams? Because AWPers do tend to farm tier 2, and everyone thinks the gun's easy. And then in tier 1, it's really hard. That happens a lot with these AWPers. And Nicoodoz, I'll be honest, he's not going to be a 1.28 rating for Heroic. Otherwise, he would be in a different team. But, and there is a but, he's clearly got a lot more to give, and he's done more than enough to deserve a chance at tier 1 again. And I want to see whether this basically not AWPing AWPer can make it stick in this new Heroic team, because he is going to need to be better than he was in Fnatic for this team to succeed. And I think he will be. I think there's clearly a lot he's learnt from that spell. But the question is how different will it be this time around? So I don't know. How much have you watched of him? What do you think?
I've watched maps here and there. I'm not going to pretend like I've watched a lot.
Oh yeah,
But I
same
feel
obviously.
like when
But the
someone's
stats,
stats are that good, you don't fucking need to watch that much. Like it's obvious at that point.
just
But
above the level, yeah.
so yeah, I think there's a couple of things to say. And number one, I'm gonna start off with the half joke, half serious comment of, if Nicoodoz doesn't work out on this team, then before you kick him, what you actually do is you just go and buy out Vorborg from his contract and pay him a coach's salary just to be an assistant coach, and all he does is sit in a room and whisper sweet nothings in Nicoodoz's ear. Because if
AWPing
Nicoodoz
coach.
doesn't work on this team, then Vorborg just has the magic touch with him, and
Yeah.
fuck knows what he says to him, but Vorborg does just seem to turn him into a better player. So, okay. Now to actually talk about Nicoodoz. I am obviously very hard on Nicoodoz. I have been very hard on Nicoodoz, but that's
Yeah, we both have.
mainly for meme purposes a lot of the time.
And that time you out-AWPed him.
But that is the joke, yeah, because you should never be out-AWPed as a level 10 by a level fucking 4 or whatever I was at the time. But
What
that
a
game was
10-man player you
fucking
were, by the
easy.
way, honestly.
Fucking nuts 10-man player. Anyway, so I actually want to talk about. I don't want to talk about his time on Prezi at all. Other than to say, yeah, really good, mate, well done. But I want to talk about the time on Fnatic, because I think I unfairly mischaracterized him in that time, and it's time for me to do some revisionism. It's normally you doing this. I'm now going to do it.
Flip
So,
flop.
I was very critical and of him on Fnatic, and me and you are often critical of AWPers, and it's more that we feel sorry for them because we know AWPing is fucking difficult.
Tier 1, yeah.
But we always say for teams to do better, you need more out of the AWPer, which is why certain AWPers are so special. Now for Nicoodoz, he was on a Fnatic team that realistically was pretty fucking bad.
Yeah.
Like it was bad. Like they may have done well in like their first ever event, or maybe the couple of events after that. I
It
think.
was Rio playoffs, right?
Yeah, but I
Rio
think the
playoffs was basically their only
first
result.
event was Pro League, which they maybe
9th,
top
12th.
16.
No,
9th,
yeah,
12th,
9th, 12th,
okay.
12th.
And then
And
so
TIF 8 Rio, and that's about it.
so this is a guy who's been in the fucking playoffs of a major twice, like almost made it a third time. He's very clearly got something in it. And I interviewed Vorborg in November, and I talked about or I asked him about Nicoodoz struggling in tier 1, and he said, he doesn't actually think that Nicoodoz did struggle in tier 1, because he said in Copenhagen Flames on LAN against top 20 opponents, he averaged a 1.18 HLTV rating, which obviously is a pretty low sample size. Like, we are talking majors and maybe one more event outside of that, but
Yeah.
that's a respectable number. And
Yeah. That's
in
really good.
Fnatic he was at 1.07. Oh, it's really good. And in Fnatic he was at 1.07, which is a big drop, but we're talking a much larger sample size in a team that, Copenhagen Flames were doing well in those times they were playing those lands. Fnatic were not a lot of the time. Like, we are talking about a team
Yeah.
that was doing dog shit and was obviously going to do its 17th rebuild in the last 2 years. And
Yeah.
I think at the time, and it wasn't until that interview with Forborg, at the time, I never really put into context of how that would negatively affect Nicoodoz. And then, so obviously, Copenhagen Flames good numbers, and then he's gone to Prezi, it's a functional roster, and his numbers are through the roof. So I actually think Nicoodoz on this team, and yes, he's going to need to be good. He's going to need to be a second star, especially because we can't truly identify a third star. But I think Nicoodoz fucking has the shit to do it. I actually think Nicoodoz, because Kyxsan was a kind of an inevitable. You have to go for Kyxsan, and Nertz was one of the best players on the market essentially. I actually think Nicoodoz is the smartest signing. I think Nicoodoz is the fucking baller signing that Heroic fucking geniuses for
The
picking him
sort
up
by rating
before anyone
signing.
else does. No, not even that. Not even that. I actually think I think I've completely 180'd on Nicoodoz, and I hope I'm not proved wrong and he's just shit at tier 1, because that would be really sad now. But I actually think he's going to do really well on this Heroic team, and I think he's going to establish himself as a top AWPer.
My one concern is what I was saying earlier about Nork being a very, very different type of player, and he's the only one we've seen Kyxsan IGL. Because I think you're right about the Vorborg link. I think Vorborg knows how to get the best out of Nicoodoz, and he tells his IGL how to get the best out of Nicoodoz. And it's clear that he requires a lot of freedom. And I think in this Heroic team, he should get it. Like, it should be, like, in the pack, like, as much as Teses is obviously going to want to make plays, I think Nicoodoz is probably your main playmaker, actually, even on T side, because he is going to be rifling for the majority of these rounds. Maybe Nicoodoz is just down, but a much more aggressive one. And that's kind of where we're looking instead, actually. And it's going to be really interesting to see what he can do in that kind of very, very rifle heavy AWPing role. Because yeah, I mean, we've not seen him on LAN for a while, and that's always going to be a question. Like, I was really excited to see that Prezi team try and qualify. Like, I'm actually kind of sad that Nicoodoz got poached, but I could see.
Oh,
like,
I am as well.
but it's fair enough, like, isn't it? It's fair enough that you're going to poach him. And I think it's telling that they've replaced him with Dupree, who also doesn't AWP. So they've basically just said, fuck it, we don't need an AWP on CS2, which I'm not going to get into for Cloud9 related reasons. But for Heroic, it's all their gain, right? It's all their gain. And someone like Nicoodoz has clearly got his mind screwed on about CS2. He wanted to get another shot at tier 1 by really putting the effort in, and he's earned it. And I think you cannot take this opportunity away from him, and we're just going to have to wait and see what it's like, because there just isn't a fair sample to judge him off yet. You can say he smashed it in Prezi, but we're just going to have to wait and see on the actual Heroic front.
Yeah, of course we do, but I
But
actually
you've gone balls to the wall.
I'm not worried at all. I'm going balls to the wall. I think
I'm a
we've
little
got
bit
to
more
go
worried.
balls to the wall about something. I've been negative thus far, so yeah, I think, yeah, fuck it, Nicoodoz, he's going to be a baller in 2024. Which moves us on to the one player that we know already is a baller, because Sjuush and Teses, great in their roles. Unfortunately, you don't have baller roles. So let's talk about the baller, and let's talk about Nertz. So, one little quick fire question maybe. after the year he's had, and no, you'll probably elaborate based on a thing we were talking about earlier, but after the year he's had, should Nertz be on a better team than this?
I think he would 100% be on Falcons if they had an owner from anywhere else in the world. Like, I'm just gonna fucking say it. There's no point being around the bush. He would be. He just would be. You're not gonna tell me that anyone in Ents is like Boros is a better player than Nertz. None of them are gonna tell you that. No one. I think he's
Boros,
the
who doesn't
biggest.
actually know what a flashbang is.
He's a huge victim of this Ents fall apart, right? Like he's a huge victim of that. And I think I was hoping he'd land on his feet. There were rumors of other teams being after Nertz. Really some strange ones as well. But he's ended up here, and I think, and it does suck for him, and it's good. It could be easy for him to kind of wallow and self pity. But I think what he needs to do is just be like, "Fuck it, I'm a fucking baller. I don't need that lot," and just turn the fuck up. And I think he will. He's clearly got that potential to be this kind of takeover player. He's had his kind of. I mean, it's weird that we call it the Rookie of the Year for some reason. Like people seem to think rookie means young, but Nertz is it was his rookie year this year. Like we forget that he joined after for Pro League like in February. That's his first like proper tier one event with Ents was Pro League, right? So he's still very new to the scene, and raw numbers insane. Like he's clearly a very very high impact lurker, the exact type you need in modern CS. Like there's very few things I can point to and say as a flaw, but there is one, and this did kind of hold him back on top 20 this year. Like he ended up 13th or 14th, I think. And one of the reasons he did end up below Hunter, I think, was just above him, was big match rating. And it's always hard to know because big match rating is over like 30 maps for a whole year for someone like Nertz. And it's mainly in Cologne that this comes. Like he had a bad Cologne all event long and had quite a bad playoffs when Ents finished second and some Pius was going crazy and, as he always does. So that's like a small concern, especially in a team with like Sjuush, who's also one of those big differentiators in playoffs generally. But I'm not hugely concerned about that. I think that's a first year in tier one thing. I don't think that's a write Nertz off. I think Nertz is going to elevate this team a lot. I think he's a better player than Stown. I think he's the best player Heroic probably ever had. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Has Heroic ever had a better player than Nertz?
Blame F?
Oh, Nertz. Yeah, okay, Blame F is better then. Okay, second best. Forgot about Blame F.
Okay.
But I do. That's what I mean with how highly I rate Nertz. I think he's the absolute perfect profile
Yabby
to have in
before
a modern
June?
lurker. Nertz is better than that.
Okay.
Nertz is better than that. 100%. So yeah, I genuinely, I think it's an unbelievable pickup. I think they've really benefited from whatever the fuck happened at Ents to make them all leave.
Well, Falcons' owner.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just all Heroic's gain. And you're just gonna have to look at it and say he's clearly here to stay in tier one international scene. Like he's here to stay. And if we're honest, his best outcome is probably gunning like a 1.25 rating and a shit Heroic team, and then going to someone nuts next year. Like that's probably what's going to happen because he is that good.
Yeah.
But for Heroic, I think he's the reason I'm so confident they're going to be a top 10 team. And then I think there's a question mark on Nicoodoz. There's a question mark on how important a floor of Sjuush and Teses is going to help them. And then I think where there aren't question marks is that Kyxsan is clearly a solid IGL and Nertz is clearly a baller and here to stay. I think those are the two places where I'm confident in this being a top 10 team, and Nertz is a huge, huge part of that.
Okay, so I mentioned the word quickfire. That was certainly not that. Okay, so there's points that I'll go through because you did bring up the big match rating. I hope that's not a consistent thing, and it's also
not going to have to worry about it this year much as well, probably.
Well, so this is what I'm going to get to. It's also why it's both a shame he didn't go to Falcons because Falcons, there's no way they don't end up playing big games. There's just none.
Yeah, last partner team.
Yeah, but also it's why he probably did maybe deserve to land on heroic, where he can just like be somewhere and be a star. The problem is that he now he now has a team where he won't actually get to play that many big maps. Like, you know, I I don't know if the format for spring final is changing. I don't know if it's just groups or the finals format's changing. But that's a 4-team arena playoff event. Off the top of my head right
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
the IEMs are 6 teams. Pro League is in a fucking studio. Like, how many times this year is Nertz going to get to play these big games to actually fix that element of his game? Because it probably won't be many, if at all. Being realistic, maybe 1 or 2 events this team makes playoffs. So while it's really good to have a player like him because a group stage warrior can push you to playoffs, he might not lose the element of his game, and that might limit him in the long run, where we then see him get that move and he's still not, you know, entirely ready to be on a lineup consistently helping them win trophies. However, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Nertz on heroic, and everything you said I agree with, up until the point where you say top 10 roster, and I say this team can make the top 10 a few times a year. I don't think they'll be consistent top 10.
They're going to play every event, right? They're going to have to nab some point somewhere. I mean, I know what you
No,
mean.
they're going to
I
be at every event,
understand the
sure, but
skepticism.
there's no way this is a consistent top 10
Okay, so
team.
the way I think about whether a team should be top 10 on paper, I mainly, like, you remember I said earlier about the kind of weak link, strong link sport. I think CS a lot of the time, once you get into these weaker teams, is more of a strong link sport. And I think Kyxsan saw, and then Nertz as your start, I think that genuinely is probably good enough for top 15 already. And then Nicoodoz, Sjuush, and Teses only really need to push you over the edge for top 10. Like, we are talking about the teams at the bottom of that, they are good. And I think the more realistic thing is probably like top 8 to top 13 or something, like off the top of my head. Like, I'm not 100% sold on any of it. But I think they're going to be a better team than Complexity, for example. I think that's kind of where you're looking, probably.
Are they going to be? Are they?
I think so. I think so. I think
Not
Nertz is as
sure.
good as Elite, if not better.
Mm,
And I think that's the main reason that they're there. Elite is basically carrying them. So that's what I mean. I think the teams
yeah,
at the bottom
okay.
10 right now, like, obviously there's going to be Liquid and Spirit who are just going to shoot up, like everyone expects that to happen. But it's like I was saying at the top of the episode, it's the teams, the Navis and the Astralises with their roll fuck up, with Mouse without Frozen, Monty, Complexity. Like, these are not teams that are guaranteed to be better than Heroic. On paper, you can make an argument that they should be. I think you probably will make that argument. But I would not be surprised if Heroic slot in the middle of that kind of bunch of teams. And there's going to be a few surprises as well. There always is. Like, the top 10 is not going to stay the same. But I would say Heroic are definitely a top 15 team, and I'm pretty confident in the ability of Nertz and Kyxsan to kind of get them to be about 10th for most of the year.
Okay. They're definitely a top 15 team because I only listed off 15 teams. And so they're definitely there. There's no way fucking OG are coming into that. There's no way fucking. I guess
Crazy.
Furia might be able to. Prezy are done for now, mate. Sorry.
That's so sad.
Nip, unfortunately, aren't going to. I really want Alex to succeed there, but sorry,
I
mate.
mean, it's always going to be like big Eternal Fire, Bet Boom, but nah, Heroic should be better than those.
I mean, Bet Boom are the only ones out of those three that's going to do it.
NIP, they
Let's
should be
be
better than NIP.
real. So yeah, it's a consistent top 15 team that will probably be closer to 10 than 15, and it will surpass 10 a few times over the year. We've not spoke about Saw. I think unless there's anything you want to say, I think the only thing that needs to be said about Saw is, for me, he was the best coach of 2023.
Yeah, I voted for him
Who,
as that too.
in theory, will elevate Kyxsan. And if there is anything in this roster that goes wrong, he's probably the best qualified person in the world to fix that and find a new player that will come in, and you'll suddenly forget why it went wrong in the first place. So, yeah, Nicoodoz is the baller signing that I think will elevate this roster in a playing sense, but Saw massively raises this roster's floor and also massively raises this roster's future, I guess is the best way of putting it. It secures its future. There we go. That's the best way of putting it. So now we've come to the end of the episode. Unless there's something you want to say about Saw.
No, I mean, I completely agree. Coach of the year for me. I think it's going to be maybe another Glazonic situation. We'll see where Snappy and Saw end up, but I'm pretty convinced they're both pretty wicked, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I don't see a justification for anyone being above Saw. So yeah, great work by Heroic in getting him, and it's kind of a shame that the roster fell apart, because I think Saw could do some really big work with the previous roster as well. So now that we're at the end of the episode, let's go back to the question I posed right at the start, and let's see if anything has changed. So I'm going to go back over the list just to get it fresh in the minds. G2, Na'Vi, FaZe, Vitality, Cloud9, Spirit, Astralis, Mouse, Falcons, VP, Monty, Liquid, Complexity, Heroic. Is this a team that will consistently sit in the top 10?
No.
What the fuck was that dramatic pause for?
I just got distracted, sorry. Well,
that's staying in. That's staying in.
It's staying in. It can't stay in. We'll have to scrap that.
No,
we'll have to have a cut there. Sorry, I've just been getting a million pings. I've looked over to my right and seen what Jack's put in. So that's
Well, we'll deal with that. We'll deal with that in a second.
What did you actually
that's staying in, because that was really good. Do you need me to? Oh my god! Fucking hell! You're so.
Sorry,
this
Charlie.
Is staying in, by the way. This is staying in.
I mean, that's not staying in.
Don't apologise to Charlie. It's staying in because it was really enjoyable. I've really enjoyed that moment. All those teams, who is, is this team going to be consistent top 10? And I'd like to remind you that in that part that you want cutted, you said no.
I'd love to know what the question was.
I listed off teams. I just said it again. Is this team going to be a consistent top 10? Are you good?
I'm joking. I was listening. I know what you mean, but I think your bar for consistent top 10 is probably going to be higher than what I think of. I think they're going to be a consistent top 8 to 12.
Whoa. Yeah, no. Okay, no, but that's what I mean. It's an 8 to 12.
Yeah, it's the bottom of the top 10 team. That's what I've been saying all episode. I think, to be honest, I think that's where they're going to land.
Yeah, but okay, consistent top 10. I kind of mean total time in the top 10 over the course of the year, not do they just sit
more than half. More than half. My turn for balls on the wall. Team Nertz. I mean, they're starting
So
on nothing, which is it's going to be hard because they're starting on nothing. But they
you
are in
think they'll
Blast.
be
They're
in
in
the
Pro
top?
League.
You think they'll be in the top 10 more than 6 months of this year?
Give them a 2-month head start because they're starting on nothing, and then I reckon they're going to be.
So 5 months,
They
4
need a
months,
few good runs. They need a few good runs of them to just stay there.
5 months, 4 months.
4 or 5, if I had to say. And we're never
I'll
going to
give
come
them.
back to this.
I'll
So
give
it's
them
fine.
3 months total. I'll give them 3
3
months
months,
total.
okay.
3
Right.
months total. In the
It's
top
a fun
10.
little team. Like as international teams go, I think there's more to be excited here than there is in most of them.
3 months total in the top 10, and that's me being optimistic.
Yeah, you're probably more right. I'm just team Nertz.
I know I'm
Whatever.
probably more right. So with that, we'll end it there. The part where you've fucked up is staying in because I've now referenced it in multiple places. Fuck you, Harry.
You were just monologuing for so long, man. I've been
Bruv, I
getting
was just
so many
listing
pings.
teams off. All right. Anyway,
Yeah, fucking
yeah,
hell.
we'll deal with that fucking issue in a minute because that's pissed me off. But anyway, let's flip it round and get out of here because we're hitting delirious stages. What do you guys think? Can this heroic team be a consistent top 10 team? And what does consistent top 10 mean? How long can they be in the top 10 over the year? And that could just be a week here, week there, just to be clear on that one. Other than that, subscribe to the channel, like the video. We'll be back once a week, every bastard week, except for the ones that we skip it because we're lazy. Next week we'll be talking about how the HLTV top 20 works. I'm going to make Harry feel really uncomfortable. It's going to be really fun. And we'll see you in the next one.